So, hello and welcome to Own Your Divine Light show. I'm Janet Miller, and I invite you to meet Lisa Kostova, a true Renaissance woman who is a career strategist. She makes a difference for driven women who feel stuck in their careers through her company, Athena Life Strategy. Lisa believes that women can achieve their most audacious career goals by learning to negotiate, take opportunities before they feel ready. Lisa uses her Harvard MBA, a decade of experience as a product executive in Silicon Valley, endurance training for mountain climbs. Yes, Lisa climbs very big mountains. And her training as a master evolutionary astrologer to empower women to reach their next level. Lisa's mission is to put 100 women on mountains, whether they are virtual mountains or actual glaciated rocks. Lisa achieved her Master Astrologer certification with Stephen Forrest, astrologer to Sting and Robert Downey Jr. Lisa is also a registered prana vinyasa yoga teacher. Her mountaineering mentors include Stephen House and Lydia Brady, the first woman to climb Everest without oxygen. Lisa is truly a multifaceted modern Renaissance woman. Welcome, Lisa. It's an honor to have you here.
Well, thank you, Janet. It is my pleasure to be here and to support you in this amazing project.
Thank you, Lisa. So, Lisa, how did you go from Silicon Valley career to astrologer, mountain climber, and yoga teacher? What caused you to follow this path?
I didn't follow it. It found me. I was working very hard in different startups, in different companies that were growing really rapidly in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, in the field of technology. And I was feeling like I needed something to support my own soul and my own growth during that time. And first I found my master yoga teacher, Shiva Ray, in 2014, and I started studying with her, and the path kind of led to me receiving all these certifications for trainings completed with her, to a point where I said, well, I'm on the way to becoming a certified yoga teacher. Let me just continue, because it feeds me, it feeds who I want to be. It is like a dunk in the river when I need a drink. And the same thing happened with my astrology teacher, Stephen Forrest. I had always been guided by astrology. My godmother, when I grew up in Bulgaria, was an astronomer and a scientist, and she was also an astrologer. So she would always guide me very positively using her astrological knowledge of my chart. And I always had the confidence and the belief in myself, and I always knew what my strong points were and how I could take advantage of opportunities when they came my way. So it was very much ingrained in me. And then throughout my career, my early 30s, I found Stephen Forrest in a similar fashion, kind of following the yellow brick road of my interests. And I ended up attending my first apprenticeship program with him in Northern California. And then I began attending it regularly and becoming a student of his. And literally, he continues to be my mentor. I come to him with questions. We talk regularly. He looks at my chart. And so it's really become, for me, it's been very important to have these master teachers on my path, as well as in my career, which I've had people who've supported me, who've taught me valuable skills, and who've been important leaders and examples in my career as well.
Wow. So how did the mountain climbing come in?
Well, the mountain climbing came in, again, as something that found me. A few years ago, at the end of 2017, my partner, who is also in technology, he fell very sick and he was hospitalized. And we both had a wake-up moment at the time when we decided that we were burning the candle on both ends in our jobs. So we decided to take some time off and go and recuperate. And he's from New Zealand, so we went to his home country. We started hiking to help him recover after the sickness. And we loved the tramping, as they call it, down under in New Zealand. It is kind of bushwhacking, hiking, very serious hiking. We loved it. And literally, he sprained his ankle one time and he was researching online about what else we could do, and he found this guiding company that was offering mountaineering courses. And so we started training for that course, and we took the course, we took additional courses. We loved mountaineering. And in New Zealand, unlike the US, they actually let you learn a lot of more advanced things that here in the US they are not permitted to let you do because of liability. So in New Zealand, we learned how to place our own protection in rocks and ice. We learned how to lead climb, which means we're both on the rope and then somebody goes first and they place protection and they secure the other person coming up. And so we were literally like kids in a candy store, and we just wanted more. And we started climbing in New Zealand, guided climbing. We loved it. We came back to the US and we said, okay, we're not done yet. We want to climb something in the US. And we ended up climbing one of the major peaks in Alaska that kind of was, on the yellow brick road, and we've been continuing climbing since then. My big next goal is Denali, which I'm currently in the process of training for. I've been training for over 5 months now. Have about 2 more months to go, and the expedition is a 3 weeks on the mountain expedition that starts in mid-May. So that's my next one.
That's incredible. Wow, what a journey. It's so great. You've just kind of followed your bliss. Whatever's come up, you've just let it lead you, which is a beautiful thing. A lot of people don't, but you're following it, which I think is so great. I mean, that is it's a great, you're a great inspiration to people. Like, it's okay to follow what, these little suggestions that come up in your life. It's like, wow, look what it leads you to. Go ahead.
And, in my life specifically, it hasn't always been easy. I'm a workaholic. I'm a career person. I've been very dedicated to my teams, my companies. I've had to set boundaries for myself, or I would have, burned out earlier. I would have gotten tired earlier. But also I don't want to leave our listeners with a message that, yes, you have intuitions, you have hits, you have these things that show up in your life. But then you have to really ask yourself, how much do I really want this? How much does it mean to me? Because there are things I've also done that have given me joy and pleasure that I haven't followed up to become masterful in. The things that were truly speaking to me, to my soul, I could feel their effect when I was with my teachers, when I was performing the activity, when I was climbing the mountain. Something that transforms you in such a powerful way is something that is worth you fighting for. And honestly, it was difficult because sometimes in my job, I would have a product release or something very urgent, and I would be expected to be there, but I was committed to my astrology apprenticeship. And so I had to make these difficult trade-offs, and they would not always be supported by my bosses or even by my ex-husband. My ex-husband was very embarrassed that I was into astrology. He couldn't believe how an educated person could believe in such things. And really that caused a lot of strain and made me really think about what is important to me and what price am I prepared to pay for defending that which is important to me. So it's not like a rainbow and Pollyanna type of thing, yeah. Even though it may look easy from the outside looking in, but it wasn't like that.
No, it doesn't look easy. No, it doesn't, Lisa. It just looks like commitment and passion that you have chosen. Like you're saying, you've made this, it's like a spiritual journey for you. To me, this is part of your spiritual journey. And, I know spirituality is very important in your life. And you say that it is the most powerful when you integrate it with your life and not compartmentalize. And so that's what you're doing here. And, how else can you say you put that in your life, spirituality? Mm-hmm. How else would you talk about that?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question. And, I know my own chart really well. So as an astrologer, I understand I understand some of my blind spots and some of my habits from prior lives, if you want. The type of astrology I practice and I use as a tool in my work with career women is one that looks at a lot of kind of baggage that we bring in or that we are not aware of. And part of mine is, in the past, I've always been kind of separating myself from the world. I have spent times on mountaintops. I've been enrolled in monastic orders. I've been the person who just renounces everything that is material, impure, materialistic, and just goes and alms for, you know, a lifetime somewhere on the mountaintop. But in this life, I've actually come here to serve, to be of service through rolling up my sleeves and learning practical skills and applying them in the real world. And so for me, spirituality has been something that I get to, I'm very connected with. It's part of my gift to the world, but I don't get to use it as an escape anymore. Right. And just like with prior lifetimes, early in this life, I was separating, compartmentalizing my life. I would go to an astrology apprenticeship program, and then I would literally turn my other life off, and I would show myself as a completely different person in that environment, in that community. Then I would go back to being, you know, the left-brained product manager with an MBA at work who everybody relied to for producing results. And then I would go to India with Shiva, and then we would do, martial arts in a beautiful temple on the earthen floor, and I would be a completely different person there. And that's a habit I've carried for lifetimes in terms of, okay, I get to be this person here, I get to be that person here, and this is my spiritual box over here. In the past year and a half, I've literally started integrating these personas into one, and that includes the spiritual aspect. So I'm a firm believer that we as women, that we as modern individuals get to show up fully, get to show up as a whole person wherever we are, whatever we're doing. And that's how now I think of spirituality as one important component in who I am, but not like the good side of me versus the, okay, the bad or the kind of material side of me. My challenge this lifetime is to combine both and see them both as a gift and see the whole, the united whole.
Mm-hmm. So you're grounding in reality, really, is what you're doing. You're grounding all that in reality, which is the whole reason to do it here now. This is part of the reason most of us are here, is to ground all that in reality now. And I understand that because I can do the compartmentalizing myself sometimes. So that's a very good insight to how people can understand you could be doing this and you don't know it. So look at that. It's kind of interesting to allow yourself to be the authentic person that you are, which is all of you.
Yes.
And, yes.
And I like the title of your show, Divine Light, because our divine light is not part of ourselves. Mm-hmm. It is all of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And honestly, the only thing that dims it is our own anxieties, fears, mm-hmm. mistrust in ourselves, thinking that we're doing something wrong, passing judgment on ourselves. And we get to show up. We get to show up with our imperfections and with the things that we still haven't mastered. We don't get to show up as perfect images of some unattainable ideal. That is not the divine light. The divine light is who we are being and what drives us, and, all the imperfections included.
Yes, that is so true. It's owning all of you, because some of your other darker parts can also be an asset to you in your life. So we learn to look at our shadow and say, okay, is this something that it really helps me in my life, even though there's a nicer way to bring it through. You just have to tamp it down a little, or maybe just shift it a little to make it a little more palatable. But, there's a couple of books that have been out, and I can't think of the name right now, but I think it was by Ariella Forder. she said, owning your shadow, and talked about she was a bitch, and that when you're a bitch, it helped her though get somewhere in life. And yet, she said, because of that bitch part of me, I could really get somewhere, and then people would listen. And so now I've learned how to make that a better asset in my life and to integrate it in a better way. So, all the shadow parts are not necessarily bad. It's just the way you integrate it into your life. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's an interesting thing to look at. So I wanted to ask you, I know you say that women find that women sabotage themselves with some of their bad choices, and they need to be aware of those. Can you tell us more about how you help women with that?
Yes, absolutely. So this is something I feel very passionate about because I've seen it over and over and over again in my work, in my career. So to give you a bit of a background, I rose really quickly in my career. After business school, I switched industries. Before business school, I was on the investment side. So I was doing due diligence and writing investment memoranda for investments in private equity and venture capital funds, as well as companies. And my work was very analytical, very high level, kind of like an economist, but also drilling down and looking at the teams. And then after business school, I switched into the operating world. I really wanted to be directly responsible for creating products. And so I worked for a lot of high growth companies in the tech space that grew so rapidly that all of us there were living like dog years. So instead of having 1 year worth of experience in 1 year, we managed to pack 6 or 7 years worth of product development experience. And because of that, I kind of quickly rose through the ranks, and very quickly I was in a position to manage teams and also part of executive teams. And I was looking at how women on my team were interviewing, how they were behaving, how they were valuing themselves versus the men on my teams and my peers as well. And I was observing, I had the opportunity to observe that from various angles, as a person who was interviewing, vetting, as a person who was doing calls for getting references, as a person who was giving reviews and having these mentoring conversations and compensation negotiation conversations and feedback conversations with my teammates. And over again, what I saw was a couple of key observations. One is women in general tend to prepare to feel like they're 100% ready before they ask for something. That's not just compensation. That is actually, more importantly, opportunities or projects that are going to put them in a position to be recognized, to see their impact that they're having. And women kind of hold back. They wait to be invited. And then compare that to the men who, generalizing, of course, there's exceptions, but generally speaking, tend to just lunge at opportunities as ways to improve, to learn. They're not afraid to make mistakes and fall on their face because they feel proud that they at least tried. And so they're asking for opportunities. They're showing up in, saying, oh, I can do this. Give me an opportunity. Let me try. They're not afraid to break things. And they're not afraid to kind of make mistakes. Mm-hmm. So what ends up happening is that these guys end up being more visible, having impact, and then being naturally more easily recognized and compensated. And for women, it becomes this conversation of like, I'm working so hard, I'm staying late in the office, I'm the last one in the office, I'm plugging in all these hours. Well, you know what? I have a message for you. It is not enough, and you're doing the wrong thing. You're working hard by basically putting in more hours on things that are not visible, because you're thinking that somehow by doing this, you're going to get the experience or the readiness to be taking on these things that are bigger and more impactful. And my message has always been, just go for it. Go for it. Just You don't have to, of course you need to work on your skills. Of course you need to learn basic things. If you're completely ignorant, if you don't have any of the prerequisites, then you have no place, obviously, going for any of the bigger projects. But assuming everybody's kind of got that basic foundation, basic training, the difference really comes from the willingness to go after those opportunities. So that's one big difference I've seen between men and women, and how women actually hold themselves back. Another important difference that I've seen is women tend to, I don't know what it is, but they tend to, we have somehow an issue with asking for what we're worth, because I don't think we believe we're worth as much as we are. Uh-huh. In general, I've seen guys be more confident. They think of themselves as more valuable than women do. And that has a compounding effect. At some point, that just opens more doors. That gives you slightly more opportunities. Obviously, if you're completely out of the range, that, you know, gets you corrected. Like, I had one time a very junior person who thought he was really the bomb and was asking for something completely unreasonable. Well, no, I'm not talking about that, but in general, women have this sort of kind of holding back and waiting to be invited and not really valuing themselves. Mm-hmm. And then the third difference that I work with women to really develop is change what they're putting their energy into. So as women, we tend to compartmentalize, and that's especially true if we have other roles like moms or family caretakers, or, you know, girlfriends or what have you. We tend to say, okay, I'm at work now, I'm going to be super efficient, super productive, and then I'm turning my work brain off when I walk out of that door. Guys don't do that by and large. Guys have these networking groups that are informal. They go, you know, to the bar together, they talk business, they golf together and talk business. Women, we tend to think that everything is so like on and off, and then we don't develop our own networks of support. We don't develop our board of directors. I believe every woman in a career, whether she is an entrepreneur or working for a company, should have a board of directors, or should have a mastermind group, or both, that she meets regularly with, and that she gets inspiration from, she gets calibration from, and she gets to up her game constantly instead of staying behind and being a lone wolf. So women are putting their energy into kind of like, okay, I'm going to do my individual contributor work. I'm just going to work really hard and be very, like, how many women have told me, oh, I'm told that I'm so hardworking. And I was told that when they fired me. Like, so many times. And it's happened to me too in my early career. I was fired from a job, and I was told, oh, but on the upside, you were really the most hardworking person on the team. Duh. Thank you.
So why did they let you go?
A long story, but I will bring it back to what is truly important, especially as you go forward in your career. You want to be spending less time on your individual contributor work, nose to the grindstone, and be spending a lot more time becoming visible, contributing to your industry through speaking, through writing, through being a participant, through not just going to any networking events, but really having meaningful conversations and developing relationships with people who you care about them, you want to help them, you want to contribute, and then they help you, they mentor you. And so that's what I encourage my clients, is really to get out of their heads and to look around and smell the roses, because the game rules really change as you advance in your career. So I'm sorry for the long answer, Janet, but this is truly a passion of mine, and I can go on talking for hours about this.
Well, I think it's a great subject, and it's a beautiful, path you've taken to help women, because you've seen it, you've experienced it. You were in charge of the men and the women, so you have a perfect, analogy of what the situation is. And, women need to hear. This is great. It's great information. They probably don't even realize it. Many women don't. It's an awareness that they don't know. So you're bringing an awareness to them in the workplace, like this is a better way to further yourself, you know? So it's wonderful. I think it's really important that you're bringing that up, because women do step back. We are supporters. Many women are supporters. And so they will support before they're going to be the promoter for themselves, or the, you know, the person who steps up and says, oh, gee, look at me too. You know, I do want to help, and I do want to do something, and I want to be here a little more visible. So women don't mind being invisible sometimes, but yet when it comes to the actual, you know, compensation and changes in jobs, they want to be visible. So you're telling them how to do that. And it's really wonderful.
Yes, it all comes down to, we think the world operates, or the office operates with a certain set of rules. And I know, because I believe that hard work is rewarded, that you will be seen, and it's a meritocracy. But what it really happens is the rules are based on relationships. The rules are based on a lot of things that transcend the walls of the office. And if you learn to play that game and you become really good at it, it's very rewarding as well, because you can develop meaningful relationships. It is wonderful to be contributing to the whole industry. It is wonderful to have like a bigger field of operation, rather than being kind of, you know, stuck in your own little world. And it's a world that a lot of women don't know exists outside of their little cubicle.
Well, because women were never invited into it before. It was sort of a special area for, you know, the other half. And, you know, men, you know, they still have their own stuff. So, you know, men, I mean, we understand that, you know, they have to, you know, the old way was the men were the provider. Well, now women and men are both equally providing. So women need to be looked at as equal providers. And so they do need to allow themselves to get out there and network and learn how to, you know, have these relationships that are so important. And it could be playing the game, but yet in a lot of ways it's being authentic and what you really want in your life, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's wonderful. It's a great tool that women need to learn, you know? It's just so important. It really is. It really, really is. So thank you for that. And so I know that, so now you're doing your astrology work as well. So how do you bring that in? I know you bring that into your work with the women. How do you?
Yeah, absolutely. I bring it in the same way I've used it all through my life and my career. It really is an amazing shortcut for me as a counselor, as a coach, to see some of your blind spots. And believe me, as a hyper analytical person, I vetted this, I tested it, and I just couldn't argue with it. It worked. And honestly, my left brain battled with this so hard for many years. It was like, why is this working? Why is this working? This just doesn't make sense. And so I've actually developed in my own mind an understanding of why it works. And I'm not going to share it now because it's long. Okay. But in general, what I do is I see the astrology chart as an extra window insight into the person that doesn't take a lot of years of, you know, sessions to tease out. It doesn't take a lot of money and investment to actually see. I can see right away. And what I can also see is, from my own experience and my master teacher's experience, is kind of the pitfalls and the blind spots. And I can also see kind of what your relationship and communication style is, and how you can use that to your advantage at work. Like, what is the way that you communicate that lands with individuals? What do you need to develop to actually beef that communication style so it works for you, as opposed to stop you in your tracks? Mm-hmm. I also look at time cycles. So as we go through life, the planets change in relationship to where the planets were at the time of our birth. And I've personally used these cycles to validate and give me confidence to make some scary decisions in my life. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, I knew it was time. You know, my whole inner being was telling me, but looking at my chart, I knew it was time to separate from my ex-husband at the time. You know, it was very difficult and emotionally not an easy choice. I knew it was time to strike out on my own when I did. Also looking at the years ahead, I can see the path ahead, and I literally can see, well, this is what happens when I step up and follow my true path, even though it looks really scary and I have to come out and say to everybody, I'm doing astrology, I'm doing all these other things that are not a typical Harvard MBA staple. But also I can see what the path is if I kind of stay where I am. And literally the difference between that is happiness and fulfillment and climbing a hard path, but being really on track versus kind of living a half life where I feel depressed, where I'm settling, where I'm just numb, and where I'm numbing myself with, expensive occasional vacations and TV and, lots of wine in the evening or what have you. So I can see those possibilities of depending on what the choices I make based on what the planets are doing with my chart right now and in the next few years. So it adds a dose of visibility. It adds an additional level of self-knowledge and awareness. And I teach my clients to understand their charts. I don't want to be a bottleneck in their own understanding of how things evolve. So you don't have to be an astrology buff to work with me, but you will end up learning, you will end up understanding and having a different perspective on what are the things occurring in your life. And more importantly, how you can be more proactive in managing those energies. It literally is the difference between completely being blindsided and responding to things, and then being able to say, oh, I actually expected something of this nature to be the next step or to be the challenge or to provide me that push that I need. And I'm looking at this as an opportunity versus some horrible thing that happened to me and that I need to hide from or complain about. So astrology really is for me the kind of one of the core methods by which we get empowerment, by which I and my clients get empowered, because it is so true to us and so authentic. And I also look at it from a very scientific point of view. Like you will get concrete, concrete dates and concrete practical advice. For me, that is also married with my understanding of what the office environment or what the negotiation looks like. So we could together put a strategy and plan of how you are going to develop the things that you need to develop and have the conversations you need to have, take the steps you need to have in order to completely skyrocket in your career.
Wow, that's really special. Oh my goodness. What a great, tool, and what a great offering you're making that people can it's like a shortcut to really understand what's going on in your life, and you're giving all that clarity. Yeah. Wow. I love that. I love that. And it really does make such a difference that you can look at your life. Like when you took your different path, you saw you had choices. You could either settle, which is so easy and it's safe and it's comfortable, but that's not really living life, is it? It's not life. To me, that's not my life, and that's not your life, obviously.
Oh, I can see. I mean, you are such an example of reinvention. Somebody who, doesn't spend her days gossiping with her girlfriends and complaining about life, and just somebody who goes out there and does something new, brings a creation into this world. I want to be like you. I told you this before we started the interview. I want to be like you when I'm 60, honestly. You're such an inspiration. But one of the things I've learned very strongly from looking at astrology and understanding astrology deeply, and a lot of the scientists in history were astrologers. Astrology was only recently in the Middle Ages relegated to this occult thing. Pythagoras was an astrologer, and so was Johannes Kepler, who was one of the preeminent astronomers. A lot of the old scientists were astrologers. What I've learned through astrology and looking at those cycles, these things are built into us. We have programmed opportunities for development. They're programmed in our life. And when we don't take action, when we actually sit in inaction, it's not like nothing's happening. It's not like we are not doing anything. It's actually like we're being given a quiz or a test or an exam, depending on the magnitude of what's happening now, and we're refusing to take it. And so we're automatically flunking. We're getting enough. And so And so I want to dispel this notion that if you just sit back and you don't decide, or you don't take an action, or you don't step up, that somehow you're being safe, that somehow you're not jumping in the water and the water's going without your participation. No, you're flunking. That is what's happening. Any decision to not decide is still a decision. Any inaction is still a decision. You're voting no matter what you're doing. This is not like the US elections. You can't just like, oh, I'm not going to vote. No, you're voting every single day. When you don't do something, you're telling the universe, here's my vote. And it's still a vote. So you're forced to vote no matter what. You might as well know what your options are. You might as well read the ballot. You might as well decide intentionally.
Yeah, that's right. You might as well be intentional in your life, because then you create the most wonderful life you can. You know, when you really look at your life, no matter what other people say, I mean, you may have to negotiate it, but sometimes you just have to make that decision. And either they come along or they don't, as you've made that decision. You know, I had to make decisions in my life saying, okay, either I'm going to be dead or I'm going to be living forward and be happy. And I chose to go forward. And it was either people will stay with me or they won't. And they chose to stay. So it worked out. And I'm thrilled, you know. But it's not a perfect road, and nothing is, you know, perfect. There's no rosy ending as far as everything is smooth now. No, this is life. Life is not smooth. Life is constantly changing and constantly giving us new things to choose and challenge us. And like you say, opportunities keep coming up constantly. And I know you just talked about the cycles of reinvention, and you said that the big times are the 40s and the early 60s. Do you go any more into that, or do you think?
I mean, sure. So I have a webinar. I have this free online training that I am so excited to share with your audience, and we'll make that available so they can actually see it and hear it and experience for themselves. But really, there are things that happen here in the chart that are very personal to us. They're based on the configuration of the planets at the time of our birth. And then we have things, important cycles that we experience that are triggers that we pre-programmed in our life that we experience that are unique to us. But everybody also goes through these generational cycles, and they're based on the internal clock of the planets that is in relation to the planet's orbit around the sun. So there are two planets that I like to call the kind of biggest kind of, you know, the biggest troublemakers and the biggest friction makers and the biggest opportunity makers in my experience. And those are the planets Uranus and Saturn. And their cycles are, so for Saturn, the major cycle is every 28 and a half, 29 years. So first Saturn major cycle happens in the end of our 20s. That's when we enter into adulthood. The second one happens in our late 50s, early 60s. So that's a major Saturn cycle. We also have the cycle of Uranus, which is the planet of individuations, the planet of nonconformity, of freedom, of genius, of rebellion. So this planet actually helps us just, you know, sweep clean with very quick maneuvers a lot of the clutter that we're settling on, that we're living with, that is not useful to us anymore, that we're in denial about, honestly. And Uranus often correlates with sudden unexpected changes. So the first major Uranian cycle comes around the age of 40 to 42, plus minus a couple of years. We feel it for about a year to 2 years. And then again, there's a minor cycle every 20 or so years. So we experience our first one kind of right around graduation from college, you know, early 20s. The major one, the big one that hits us, and that's where everybody talks about the midlife crisis. It's actually a poor response to that major Uranian cycle where, you know, the guy gets a divorce, you know, he gets the young lover, and he gets his sports car and just becomes, you know, a reinvented person. That's the stereotypical version. But it happens to women as well. It happens to absolutely everybody. Everybody goes through some sort of jarring kind of desire to be free in the early 40s. And the minor one, again, happens plus or minus 20 years from now, so again in the early 60s. So there's a major, like we have these internal clocks that literally call for reinvention So we talked about early 20s, and then in kind of around the age of 30, a huge maturation cycle. Then there's other minor Saturn cycles. Then the big Uranian cycle hits early 40s. And then both the Uranian and Saturn cycle hit you in the late 50s and early 60s. So let me ask you this, Janet, how did you experience your late 50s, early 60s? Was that something that was memorable to you? Hello?
Oh my goodness. We just
Oh, there you go.
We lost connection for a couple of minutes. I apologize on that.
No worries. At what point did I cut off?
I love what you said. I heard that. And you know what happened to me in my 40s? Well, 39, I got sober. That was when I got sober, 39. I couldn't believe when you were saying that. I'm like, wow, I certainly had a huge Uranian reinvention because I knew that my life wasn't going like I wanted it to go. And I didn't want to pass any of this on to my family. And I wanted to be different. And so I went and took myself into the rooms and I just said, this is it. I'm not living like this because I grew up with it and I didn't want to pass it on. And I said, that's it. I want my family to be happy and stable and I'm breaking this chain. And so I did it. And so my 40th birthday was my 1 year sobriety.
Oh, how wonderful. That's such an amazing way to go with it. Yeah, that's amazing.
I can't ask for a better one.
Congratulations.
Spiritual awakening as well, because after I was sober 10 years or so, or even like 8 years, then I had a spiritual awakening, which led me to getting into holistic healing work. And then that was like 99 to 2000. And then through that first part of the 2000s, I just went into all my holistic healing work and studying all over again, not knowing I would ever do that. I think I turned 50 in healing school. I was like in my second year and I turned 50. It was like, wow.
Oh my gosh. So there's another planet was actually, and I have to take a look at where exactly it is in your chart, Janet, but there is an asteroid called Chiron, and he is the wounded healer. So the major Chironian cycle, which corresponds with health and healing, happens at 4950.
Oh my goodness.
So there's a lot of, health related or healing related that correspond with that cycle, and how amazing that you did that. So that just jumped, in my mind when you mentioned the healing.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing for me. I mean, I have to say my 50s were great. When I turned 50, I was so happy because I was in healing school. I was living a passion I never knew I even had. So here I was helping people. I always wanted to be of service. So I was a practical nurse. I did that, but it wasn't really my calling. I knew I liked nursing. I loved being there for people. But when I got into the healing work, it was a whole other level of helping people that I could not have imagined. And so that just swung open the big doors. And I was like, wow, this is really where I need to go. And this is where I want to go. This is where my passion was and still is. And so I've been following that path, and now it's led me to this show, which is, helping people on a little more global basis, which is more important because we need to get it out even more because it's so important for everyone to understand that they can do anything they want to change their life. And there's so many ways, and it doesn't matter how old you are. So I mean,
absolutely. And what a wonderful example you are of what happens when we manage, where we respond to these cycles with courage and with intention. Because here you're not, complaining, you're not living kind of like this half-life of depression and numbness. Here you are being a leader and reinventing a whole new you and inspiring so many people and opening doors and up-leveling your healing. How beautiful is that? I wish everybody in your generation was like that, honestly.
Well, they're getting there. I've seen a lot of people doing things that they never thought they would do, but thank you for that. I appreciate that. It does feel good to be on a new path that really is, and feeling so much better, because I was going through a little slump a few years ago. I'm like, what do I do now? What's next? You know? So I started traveling around the world and going to spiritual places. And I love that, but that wasn't it, it wasn't it anymore. I knew that was fading out a bit, even though I still want to do some of that. But there's more. There's something else I need to be doing. And it's just been pulling me and pulling me. And I found out that actually this part of my life is what I've been waiting for, to actually be, this is where I need to be to bring out what I really meant to do in this life. So that's sort of like amazing. I just found that out like last year. So it was like, really? Well, that feels so right. Thank God I could hear that, because I kept thinking, why is this taking you so long to get somewhere, you know, and do something really specific to help people? So I just kept taking the leaps of faith like you do. You take your leap of faith and you just follow it. And if it's right, you know it's right. You just keep, it's that passion that builds up in your life. And you say, this is so wonderful. I feel so fulfilled, but yet I'm helping others and I can bring this to other people. So it's a two-way street. When you reach out and help people, you also get a lot yourself. But you do have to also take care of yourself. As you said, you've got to, you know, have the self-love, which is very important. You've got to fill the cup before you go out and pass it around to everybody else. So, wow, this was wonderful. Thank you for all that beautiful sharing about the astrology. And I know your mountain climbing is another amazing thing. And I know, how did you get, I know with the mountain climbing, I just want to ask a couple questions on that.
Yeah.
It's important, I think, that people need to know. How do you get this mindset? I know you told us your new goal is Denali, and that's the mountain in Alaska, right?
Yes, it is the highest mountain in North America. And because of the extreme cold conditions and the kind of relentless work that needs to be done to get up on it, of all the 7 summits, which are the highest summit in each continent, it's considered the most difficult after Everest. So
Really?
it is quite a yeah, it is quite a it's quite the next goal for me. It's both terrifying and extremely exciting.
Because I know. So how do you get your mindset going to go do those kinds of things?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I am going through a major Saturn cycle right now, and Saturn is about the master of hard work and perseverance, and it's also the planet of mastery, and it really rewards hard, persistent work, and it transforms, much like steel is hardened in the fire over time through sustained effort. It brings amazing rewards. It transforms people from students to masters, and it really brings the opportunity to reach your next highest peak. And for me, one of my peaks is literally a mountain. And so my mindset has been to have an absolute commitment, and part of what helps with that is announcing it to the whole world that I'm doing that, committing to a certain time I'm doing it. So I'm signed up for a trip. I need to be prepared to climb the mountain by that point. And then I also was in a position to get help, because I think if you can, there's no better way to support yourself than getting any form of accountability, any form of support. So somebody who is not very experienced in endurance training, I was running the risk of overtraining, but also like undertraining or injuring myself. So I got myself enrolled with an amazing mountaineering coach. Actually, he is the one who wrote the book on training for the new alpinism, Steve House. He's a Patagonia ambassador. He's an amazing human being. He's done a lot of first ascents and is known as one of the preeminent climbers and mountaineers in the world. Very famous, very well known. And so working with him and with another coach who's actually guided Denali and guided Alaska, knows the ins and outs of the different routes and even knows all the guides there. They're with me daily, not just assigning the workouts, but they look at my data, they look at how I'm feeling, they're asking me for what's going on. I consult them when I go climbing, the type of experience I'm having. Should I push more? Should I not push more? They really help me sustain that mindset of my coach calls it 1 brick a day. laying one brick a day, and there's no shortcut. You can't just lay more than one a day or you'll injure yourself, you'll burn your body out. But just trusting in the process of like whatever you're doing every day. It could be an hour, or it could be 4 hours, it could be more than 4 hours, but whatever you're doing that day is building you for that specific climb. So the whole process of 6-7 months training is culminating in this few weeks where I will be at my strongest. And so it really takes trust, it really takes persistence, it takes commitment, it takes accountability, and it takes support.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And you know, it's great when you can reach out for that support. As you say, it's so important. You can't do these alone. You really can't. You have to have the knowledge of everyone who's done that to help you get there. And, you know, that's so important to reach out. So,
and this is where my passion comes in as a coach for career women, because I was in a position where I literally, Janet, for the longest time and early in my career, I valued money more than I valued my time. And I didn't realize that time was so precious, because especially the earlier in your career you are, but even if you're later on, if you can do this, if you can change the trajectory of your path, then just a few years down the line, that difference becomes significant. Each year, each day that you're losing, that you're not taking action, is actually time you cannot get back. You can always earn more money. You can always get money by investing your money wisely or investing in yourself, than being able to earn more. So I encourage everybody to think of, like, how do I think of investing in myself? Because getting support and getting coaching for a lot of people is like, oh, I don't want to, you know, it's expensive, but they're not looking at what is the true cost of actually staying where you are, not developing yourself, being stuck in that place in your corporate, in your career when you're not progressing. We could be learning or taking opportunities either in the same company or elsewhere. We can be having these important conversations that take you to the next level, and just getting to the next level is just going to open that many more doors, and then that's going to lead to something else. And so the longer you wait, the more money you actually waste, because you're not going to be developing yourself to the fullest. And for me, you know, in my case, the equivalent was, instead of insuring my trip, which was going to be an equivalent cost of actually getting the coaching, I said, well, what is better, insuring the trip in case I get injured or something happens to me, or preventively getting myself to the point where I'm being monitored and I'm just going to run a lower risk of injuring myself, and I'm going to be as prepared as possible. So, you know, I really want women especially to start thinking more proactively about themselves. Girls, please, women and guys out there, the same for you, but especially for women, please be CEOs of your own life.
I love
be
that.
CEOs of your own life, and treat it as such. You have custody over your life.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So, Val, those are great words. Thank you so much. So I was going to ask you what you have for some special words for people in 2019, but you kind of just said that, didn't you?
Yeah.
So thank you. So being CEO of your life is so important, meaning that, you know, it's okay to put yourself first, because that's not being selfish, it's self-love.
And the people that you're going to associate with, look at the people that you're spending the most time with. Look at their mindset and look at them and see, is that where I want to be? And if not, find the people that inspire you. Find the people like Janet and her show and her speakers, and immerse yourself in the environment that you want to become like. And by the law of osmosis, you will start shifting a lot easier. You cannot lone wolf transformation, right?
You cannot do it alone. No, you can't. It takes, I mean, you know, those famous words, it takes a village. It does take a village, and it was probably one of the best words ever said. And, you know, it takes so much support, because we're not on this planet alone. We all help each other. And when you get support from somebody, you feel so good. You feel so loved. You feel so valuable. And we don't value ourselves the same. I know we all have to learn how to value ourselves, and it's not in a negative way. It's in a healthy way of valuing who you are. So that is a beautiful message. Thank you for that. So I know you have the gift, and you kind of mentioned it briefly. Do you want to talk a little more about your gift?
Yeah, sure. So I will make the webinar, The Cycles of Reinvention, which is just a 1-hour interactive training on how you guys can take advantage of these powerful cycles of reinvention available to your audience. And I will also include one of the bonuses that I give in that webinar for free for your audience. And so I'll make that available as a downloadable file. And you can also go and check out the webinar and learn more about these cycles and hopefully empower yourself and get yourself moving.
Yes, and also you can also, sign up with Lisa for a reading, which is amazing because she's got.
Yes. At the end of the webinar, you will see I give kind of like a special opportunity for me to kind of look at those cycles for you and help you personally.
Yes, it's a beautiful gift, and I'm taking advantage of it myself, which I haven't done yet, and I'm going to take advantage of that. So it's a beautiful gift. So thank you for that. And we would love our listeners to email us and tell us their takeaways on all that Lisa shared, which was amazing things, and comments. And I will definitely be sharing them with Lisa. And we love hearing from you and any comments you have or any shares you have. And Lisa, thank you so much for sharing what I'm saying is your tenacious and ferocious passions, which I think is so beautiful for life and all that you choose to experience, and for being a blazing comet of owning your divine light, and for sharing your wisdom and your continuous growth and experience with others, and showing them how to unlock their passions and ignite their authenticity and finally create the lives they love.
Thank you, Janet. It was a pleasure, and thank you for being such an inspiration to me and everybody.
Thank you. You're a huge one. I am Janet Miller, and I will see you on the next episode.